So I was only a couple minutes away from a seizure yesterday at 6 o'clock when coming home with water. The day before that when coming home with meds while waiting outdoors. It wasn't that cold, but it was cold enough where I started to shiver. Now, was I not dressed warm enough? Well, you tell me. It went from 60 degrees to about 55, somewhere around that range. And by the time it was 60, I was wearing underwear, long underwear, a thermal pants, like a sweatpants that are thermal, and then sweatpants over those. For my upper body, I am wearing a long sleeve thermal, no collar. Then I'm wearing a very special super thermal for shoveling snow that's actually very thin, but the material keeps you very hot. And I'm wearing that over the other thermal, no collar. And then I'm wearing a flannel thermal that's plaid over that with a collar. I have 3 plaid thermal shirts to put over that, flannels, and I have a total of 4 thermal shirts for underneath. And then I even add a vest most of the time on top of that that's heated or regular. And then after that, I add a sweater, and then after that, a winter jacket, and then after that, a heated winter jacket. So those are about the layers I can do. But right now, as the last 3 days, I'm wearing the 3 layers of thermals, so 3 thermals, and underwear and 3 sweatpants / thermal pants. And I'm still shaking, and I'm still about to... Now, from the point of view, people go, how could you not know those were called seizures? Because for years I was having seizures, and I had no idea that's what they were called. I had no idea what it looked like, nothing. And people go, so you must not have them. No, that means I do have them. Well, I don't understand. How can you have epileptic seizures but not know you have them? See, that's the problem when it's happening to your body. See, you guys have it easy when you guys see me on the ground flopping like a fish, having an epileptic seizure. You guys can go, oh, that's a seizure. And then you can report that to the doctors if they're willing to. But because the people seeing me have a seizure are people driving around the road in their cars, nobody ever stops to tell the doctors that there's a guy on the side of the road unconscious bleeding. Instead, they just go to work on their way. Nobody cares that a guy's dying on the side of the road. So with that going on repeat, what is my point of view as the person having them? Okay, I'll go to work. It'll be cold outside. I'm coming home. Flashing lights from the headlights will be coming past me. Cars coming towards me, and round, it's past me. And another car with lights going right into my face, and round. And I have to get home. There's no buses. It's late at night. So I walk. It's a little chilly. Lights are in my face, so I look down at the cement. But the cement glows and then goes black, and then glows, and then you hear wow, wow going past you. Lots of cars. So at that point, with the cold, the noise, and the light, I start feeling like somebody's holding a taser to my back. And when I try to make my next step, I pick up my right leg. I move it forward. I put it down. They call that walking. So I'm walking. I take my next step. I pick up my... Oh, nope. And my leg spasms. And I can't quite move forward. And so I have to stand there for a moment. And then I try again. And I have to rest. I have to sit down. My legs aren't working. So I sit on a rock. I wait a second. Then I try again. And I get about 20 feet down the street. And I'm twitching. My arms are spasming. It looks like I'm in a vibrating chair as I try to walk. You see tears going, and I'm like, oh, God, this is hurting. Oh, stop it. And it looks like I'm getting electrocuted because I'm trying to walk with a neurological disorder that's just about to cause a seizure. So I keep pushing it because I got to get home. The lights are still going past me, the noise. And so what happens? All of a sudden, I wake up on the ground all bloody, and I say, what the fuck just happened? All I was doing is I picked up my leg, I moved it forward. My whole body's going, oh, for the whole walk up. For 20 feet, my whole body looks like it's in a vibrating chair. Looks like I'm getting electrocuted. Tears are going down my eyes, but I'm picking up my right leg. I'm putting it forward. I mean, they've made me do this to go get CT scans. They've made me do this to go make money for the town. During COVID, they had me running the only business providing oil 7 days a week. I was the only place open. And I was doing this, having seizures on the side of the road during it. So we're going to keep on doing it. Come on. Nobody's calling me lazy. I just worked 70 hours this week. I just had a seizure on the side of the road, and I'm still going back to work. Nobody can call me lazy. But of course, the lazy people will call other people lazy. The people that are trying to commit crimes, the people that are blaming other people for crimes are the ones usually committing the worst crimes. That's usually how it is. You'll have a rich guy who just stole 20 grand, cheated on his taxes, drove drunk and hit a kid with his car, and that guy will go, that pothead is a drug addict. Meanwhile, or they'll go, oh, look at that kid. He just stole some bubble gum. Oh, that kid that wasn't raised right. He's going to be a big thief one day. Yes, because he stole a pack of bubble gum. Meanwhile, you just stole 20 grand and cheated on your taxes. You're the biggest thief. You literally just stole 12 grand, and you're calling some kid who hasn't learned what life is about yet that he's the evil one. And this is the problem in society. The people who steal 20 grand and then they cheat on their taxes, not paying their fair share, those are the same people that feel like they're special and they do more and they earned everything they have and they're better than everybody else, when really their circumstances were better. Maybe daddy left them a college degree. Maybe daddy put them through college. Maybe daddy helped them have a future by getting them job security. Or maybe daddy bought them their own apartments and then they resold them out later or something. Maybe daddy did something for them, or maybe mommy did something for them. But see, people like me, who are born in orphanages, go into foster care, get adopted. Our adopted parents, foster parents, sometimes have a tendency to suck us dry. Then they just leave us in the woods to survive at 18. That's what we have to deal with. We don't get to go to college. We don't get a regular high school education. I'm missing 4 years of my education. We don't get good doctors. We don't get to be left alone. Instead, we get tortured. We get beaten. We get made fun of. We get left behind. We get no education. We get beat with a ruler. We get poisoned. We get moved around. Our bodies are other people's to violate as they please. If somebody wants to choke me, force me to eat poisonous food, slip pills into my body, force doctors to force pills into my body, do things like that, and then I get sick and hurt. Then you can see me sick and hurt in a chair, shitting my own pants because the doctors just malpracticed me once again. And then the doctors will say, no, we did it because it's good for him. He's shitting his pants in a chair. He can't stand up. He's drooling on himself, and he can't form sentences. You're telling me that that's better? You're telling me he could control his bowels for the last 15 years, but now you just gave him a bunch of drugs because you said you're making him better, and now he's shitting his pants because you double dosed him in the same hour, and now he can't get up to even make it to the fucking bathroom. You've drugged him so heavily. You've given him Thorazine, Benadryl, and Xanax on top of a double dose of other medications like Seroquel and Thorazine and medications like that. And you double dosed him in the same hour because his roommate made up a story because he was mad at me about me not taking my meds. I told my roommate to stop talking about cocaine. I made fun of him a little bit about it. He didn't like that. I told him, what, do you want some? Why the fuck you gotta keep on talking about that shit? We're in a program, we're like 16. There is no cocaine. What the fuck's wrong with you? So I made fun of that kid like that, and he went into the hallway and told the nurse I didn't take my meds. Meanwhile, I really did take my meds, and these are meds I shouldn't be taking. The reason why I'm taking these prescriptions in the first place is because my mother is telling stories to the doctor, like when I'm tired, I'm depressed, when she drugs me with downers and I go down, and then they wear off and I'm regular and hyper because I'm ADHD, and then she gives me drugs and I'm down, or with my PTSD, as my mother does horrible things to my body and me. It causes me flashbacks and horrible anxiety. I still get it today. When I think that a doctor's going to hurt me, I get horrible anxiety because they do. I literally just got hurt last year because of something a doctor did. And the year before that, I got hurt lifting 16 bags of trash because after 6 months of going to doctors over and over to get a do not lift order, they keep on playing games with me, giving me do not lift orders that say, Zachary is excused from gym class. That does not help the Pepsi company or my business. I'm supposed to lift big cases of trash and soda. There is no gym class for me to be excused from. But yet that's the game they play with me. Why are the doctors, the people who are supposed to be helping me, causing so much damage to my life and body? Why would the doctors write a do not lift order that says you are excused from gym class? Why would the hospitals treat me like this for 25 years? Because you have a mother saying I'm going in there for attention purposes. When I'm bleeding internally or when my urine turned black, what would you do if you went to the bathroom today and you noticed your urine turned black? The first thing I did is get a clean sample. I got 2 clean samples and it was blackish green. That's not normal for urine to be black. So I'm scared now. So I go to the emergency room. Now, a normal person, what do you think would happen to you? I'm going to give you a second to think about it. What would happen to you if your urine turned black and you went to the emergency room with video footage of it coming out of your penis, 2 cup samples? They are literal like drug test cups that I borrowed off of one of my addiction specialist doctors. I had him order a couple and I had some in a drawer, so I pissed in those because they're clean and they show the temperature grade and it's clearly black, and I took camera footage of it coming out of my penis and then the cup and the temperature gauge and all that type of stuff. And I go into the doctors with all this, very concerned about my health. What did the doctors do for you in that situation? And I'm going to tell you what they did for me in a second. Think about it. What would you get for medical care? Okay. Now, what would you get if your mother and father spent 25 years telling the doctors that you like to go to the emergency rooms for fun? That this is some game you're playing, that you're trying to go when really you're freezing to death. They would find me unconscious, sober, bleeding unconscious, and my parents would tell them I'm doing it on purpose because I want a warm bed. Or, well, that's what they said, and then my parents told them I make up fantasies, I'm mentally ill, and I do it on purpose. That's what they said. And then the hospital in Lowell thought I was going into the emergency room on purpose. And I told them, I said, I don't know what else to do. I'm just telling the truth, but they're misunderstanding the details because they're going by my medical history that my mother and father created. So they're trying to come up with a mental illness for everything I tell them. Anything I tell the doctors, they're only looking for mental illnesses. They're not looking for physical health issues. When I have a seizure on the side of the road, because for 25 years I've been having falls and seizures, instead of looking at it in that light, they look at it as, where's the drugs, where's the drugs? And when they can't find any drugs, they assume it must be a game I'm playing and release me right on the spot without looking into my epilepsy at all, without doing a brain scan, without asking me any questions. They just release me on the spot. So what do you think happens now in New Hampshire when I'm pissing black and bleeding internally? I go to the emergency room. I tell them what's going on. I'm there because my urine turned black and I got pain 2 inches to the left of my belly button. And I've also now had internal bleeding also from that same region. And I want to know why my urine is black. So we have the intake paperwork. Now the doctor looks at my medical record. So he looks at the statements my mother and father made. He enjoys coming in the hospital for fun. He's doing it for fun. There's really nothing wrong with him. He's just a mental illness. He's doing it for fun. They look at those statements my mother and father made. And then they got out of control when I was homeless, age 19 to 24 in Lowell. See, in Lowell, the emergency rooms were just chalking everything up to either addiction or a mental illness. They never looked into any physical health issues. When I was about to lose my toes, they could care less about keeping me overnight. But if I was on drugs, they would keep me overnight. If I had a mental illness, they would keep me overnight. And that's all they ever did. They would connect real physical illnesses like frostbite and then have me so severely in pain that I'm out in the woods freezing to death and I end up cutting my wrist, walking into the hospital and going, now do I get to keep my toes? And then the hospital goes, yup, now you get to keep the toes. Because you cut your wrist, now we'll let you keep your toes. because they just told me they were going to amputate my toes if I did not stay out of the cold. Now, that was my third emergency room visit. My toes were starting to turn a purplish black color. They went from pink to purple to a deeper bluish purple. Now they were starting to turn almost looking like black on the tip, just on the tip though. And so I knew this had to be bad. And on my third trip to the emergency room, they just released me. I walk in, they tell me, you got to get your feet, you got to stay off your feet for a week and you got to go in the warmth and your feet will recover. If you don't, on this third trip now, if you come back to the emergency room, we're amputating your toes. So you need to stay out of the cold, off your feet for at least a week, or you will lose your toes. We will have to amputate. So they release me after only a couple hours of seeing me into a snowbank. I go to the shelter. The shelter tells me unless I got paperwork on my neurological disorder that they can't keep me. They made that very clear. The doctors won't give that, and I have no clue what's going on. They just say, stop falling down, stop acting this way. And I don't know why I can't move my legs at times. Nobody's telling me why I can't move my legs at times. It scares the fuck out of me. I'll be riding a bike and my legs will start spasming, my arms. This is why I haven't driven. But what have the doctors done about the reason why I can't drive? The rest of the world gets to go into a neurologist, get Ativan and drive a car, and then they give the paperwork to the DMV. Why can't I do that? Because my mother and father continued to lie to doctors. Then at the age of 19 to 24, I was living homeless on drugs, so the emergency rooms had little concern in spending money and looking into my physical health. Why? Because they have 15 years of mental illness paperwork that my father sent saying I'm just some nut crazy kid and that all I need to do is go to see a psychiatrist. So for 25 years, I go to a psychiatrist, I take the pills, I get worse, I get sick. I go to a psychiatrist, I take the pills, I get worse, I get sick. Go to a psychiatrist, I take the pills, I get sick. We move to Texas, I don't get sick, I'm not on pills. We move to New Mexico, I'm getting abused, my mental health is getting affected, but I'm not sick. I only have the neurological disorder and ADHD, and some of my stomach isn't doing great. But then there's food poisoning. Then they move me to Maine. Now I'm missing 3 years of education, but there's no drugs. My mother's acting a little unstable, and she drugged me and destroyed my body in Westford. Then she moves to Mass, and the drugging start again. Then the doctors continue to drug me. Take these drugs. Go to a psychiatrist. Your mother came in and told us you need these drugs. So here's the drugs. Then I get sick. Then that sickness is counted as more mental illness. Then I get more drugs. Then I get more sick. Then those sicknesses get counted as mental illnesses. So the side effects of the medications I'm being given are causing different types of issues that are being labeled. Like, for instance, if they gave me 3 meds that are downers and I start looking tired and depressed, then they put it in my file that I have depression. Then they give me antidepressants, but then those antidepressants cause me all different types of suicidal thoughts. So now I have suicidal thoughts and I report them. So now they put me down for suicidal thoughts and they put me on bipolar and more antidepressants. And then they keep doing this as my mother continues to make up stories. And then after my mother did this for 15 years and my mother dies from killing herself, my father decides the best place for me is to drop me off in a town I never lived in, out to live in the woods and call it my fault. It's my fault your wife brought in illegal drugs and I took them. It's my fault that you stole 12 grand from me and I took 100 back. Oh, if that's the case, if I'm a bad person for stealing $100 from you and stealing illegal drugs, then guess what? I have a bone to pick with you, Dad. You had your wife stealing my legal drugs. I had legal medication that was still prescribed to me. It was Vicodin, PRN, in case I was found on the ground again suffering. And your wife decided the best thing to do with my medication that I might still need is to swallow them down her throat to get stoned. So, if it's bad for me to take your wife's illegal drugs, what does it mean when your wife steals my legal drugs that are still needed? Okay, well, how about the stealing of some jewelry I thought was my mother's? I took some jewelry after my mother passed away because my father stole my inheritance and stole 12 grand from me, and he was getting charged with a crime and needed me to bail him out, which I did, and then he bailed out on his side of the deal as soon as he was out of trouble and he wasn't facing charges anymore. So I still knew that, and I lost my housing. All I want to be is in my own apartment, going to see my own doctor, working my own job, creating my own family now. That's what I wanted to do. Instead, my father wanted to lie to my housing, steal money, lie to the state, lie to Social Security, keep on stealing, keep on trying to enrich himself at my future's loss. And he continues to do this. And then, so you stole 12 grand, you outright stole it. You can call it misappropriating Social Security all you want, but I was almost 20 years old. It was time for me to reapply for Social Security, and I missed a year's classes because you lied to the program. The state, you also lied to the state. They asked you, was I on Social Security? Because I had to make a $600 payment if I was. Plus, I had to take classes and learn how to reapply. It's part of the law. It's the law. This is how it was. And my father broke it. He lied on forms and paperwork so he could keep the money and spend it on his own house instead of me getting my own rent spent. So he was taking money that was given to me and keeping it for himself. The taxpayers of Massachusetts wanted to make sure I had clothing, rent money, food, that my name was right on the check. But my father decided to hide it from me, hide it from the state, hide it from the federal government, hide it from the program, and keep it for himself. And because of that, he was facing charges. But I bailed him out as long as he kept his end of the bargain. So I bailed him out, and then he did not keep his end of the bargain and ran off. So as far as I'm concerned, that's theft. If you make a deal, here, I'm going to give you my car, and you give me 20 grand. Okay? So I gave my father over $12,000, and in return, he was supposed to do the right thing. And instead, he took the money and ran. He kept the car and he kept the money, and he ran off. That's theft. If you're taking somebody's money, that's theft. I don't care. You might have made a deal, but you broke your end of the deal, so you ran off with the money. Not only that, you made it so that your son could not survive at all. He's not allowed to work without getting injured and then having to find another job as soon as they see his disabilities, what means he can never work until his disabilities are treated. He's not allowed to use a shelter unless they know why he's on the ground bleeding, stuff like that. So what does my father do about these things? Oh, he's trying to kill me off and finish me by cutting off even more doctors, and then I'll have to survive in the middle of New Hampshire, in the middle of winter, with no shelter, no food, no water, nothing. Now, people will say, you're being over dramatic. Just go to a shelter. I am. But the shelter won't let me stay there. We've already done this with the shelter in Haverhill and a shelter in Lowell, and we've even done it with a shelter in Boston. All of them need doctors to diagnose me for my neurological disorder, and they need to know more about what my mother did to me. But every time I go into the emergency room for a seizure, I get malpractice, and they continue this. It started at age 19 when I was homeless with Lowell. The emergency rooms had no idea what was going on. My father was lying to them, manipulating them, so all the paperwork is fraudulent. Everything from before 25. Any emergency room records from Lowell General Hospital or Saints Memorial Hospital or anything related where they first used my medical records to diagnose me is completely junk. Like, for instance, what happened the night I was sober? That's what I want to know. When I had a seizure, an epileptic seizure, and they found me on the ground, why did they not put me through a brain scan? Why did they not look into my injuries? Why instead did they ask me the question, why am I sober? And then I told them, because I'm trying this new thing called sobriety. What type of stupid question is that? And she said, well, your clothing smelled like booze. Well, that's probably because somebody poured booze on my clothing when they found me on the side of the road. People are jerks. But anyways, there's no alcohol in my system, is there? No, we took your blood, we took your urine, and we did every drug test imaginable, and we can't find any drugs or alcohol. That's why we're asking you why you're sober. I said, okay, well, I don't do drugs right now. It's been months since I've done a drug or alcohol. I want to know why I was unconscious and why my legs aren't working at times in the cold. That's what I want to know. And instead, they just released me on the spot. Why would an emergency room who just found a guy unconscious on the side of the road with legs not being able to work release a guy when he's just getting his balance back? Because it's warm in the emergency room and he's been in there waiting for the doctor to come in for a couple hours, and instead the nurse comes in and does this bullshit. Why was that going on? Because they have a medical history that's fraudulent. My father's saying I'm going in there for fun. Well, that's a lie. I have never once in my life went into an emergency room or a doctor's office for fun or for not a real medical reason. Either I have frostbite on my toes, I just had an epileptic seizure, or somebody finds me almost dead on the side of the road. Then they spend less than a day bringing me back, and as soon as I'm conscious, they release me even if I can't walk without a wheelchair, falling down in the parking lot, bashing my nose against the cement until I have a bloody nose, and they won't let me in the hospital. Why would they do this? Because they think, according to the reports, according to my medical records and my medical reports, my mother and father have spent over 20 years. It's been 25 now, but they did it heavy for 20 years. For 20 years, heavily influenced my doctors and told them that they can prove that I am just mentally ill. And that's all anything is. And all I need is more drugs. And as they give me more drugs, I get more sick. My legs work even less. If you try to give me Thorazine, how is that going to get my legs moving? How is that going to help epileptic seizures? It doesn't. What it does is it helps my father not take responsibility for what happened to me, and I continue to get worse. I continue not to be able to work. I still can't collect Social Security, and I still can't stay alive, and I have to get injured every week, and I have to live in the woods dying. I'm tired of it. I'm going to kill those fuckers. I'm going to kill them. If they don't do something soon, I'm going to fucking kill them. Each and every one of them is going to get a taste of their own medicine. Each and every one of them. You don't get to torture somebody like this for 25 years and go, I don't believe it, so I'm going to hurt you some more. Go fuck yourself. I don't believe you, so I'm going to hurt you some more. How about that? How about I think you're full of shit, so I'm going to come to your house, drag you into the woods, tie you up to a tree, and cut your toes off. And then when you say, ow, 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 I'll solder it fucking shut, and then see how you like it. And when you say, well, that's different. No, it isn't. You poisoned me with drugs I wasn't prescribed. You violated my body. You put poison in my mouth without my permission or without my knowledge. And then I had seizures. I was on the ground. I lost my vision and went fucking blind. Tell me, how many times have you gone blind in your life? Huh, Dad? How many times have you gone blind? Because I've gone blind twice. Twice in my life I have gone blind. I went blind when my mother drugged me, and I went blind when I tried to take a puff of K2 one time. That's it. And that scared the fuck out of me. That was when I was 21. I took one puff, and the blood pressure popped, and I wasn't able to see. It was a blood pressure issue. You got the blood pressure spikes, and it got really bad. My blood pressure went through the roof, and I was standing up, and when I sat down, I got my vision back. But what happened with the first time at 5 to 7 years old when I went blind? I went blind and unconscious for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. What the fuck happened there? Tell me, why did I go blind, lose my vision while watching Batman Mr. Freeze in your home, Dad? Why in your home in Westford did I go fucking blind? I lost all my vision completely. I couldn't even see my fucking hand in front of my face. And why, when I was screaming for help, was I not able to speak? And why, when I tried to stand up, was I not able to stand up? And why, when my mother called for help and they told her to bring me to the emergency room, did she say, they don't know what they're talking about, and hung up? Why did she cut off all help? And why did you let me sleep off something like this after I just went blind? Is it because your wife had you convinced that nothing was going on, nothing to see here? Was that the attitude you were following? That every time I went blind and I was dying on a fucking floor, that my father was just under the influence of my mother? Is that what it is? Because if that is, all he needs to do is apologize and work on this with me and stop hurting me. That's it. All he has to do is pick up a phone, say, I'm sorry, my wife lied to me. I thought that you were just sleeping off some drugs or something. I had no idea that you were really going blind, Zach. I'm so sorry that you went blind in my home with my wife. I can't imagine what it's like to get drugged so seriously. That's the conversation we need to have. Instead, when I try to tell my father that I went blind at the age of 7 and it's affected me for 25 years, he goes, nuh-uh, we're going to hurt you some more. We're going to tell the doctors that you're mentally ill and cut off your emergency bracelet. Yeah, you don't need an epileptic bracelet. You don't need an ambulance. No, just bleed out on the side of the road some more, and that way they can't get documentation. Because as long as we chalk this up to a mental illness, as long as we convince emergency rooms like the ones in Lowell and the ones up there not to treat you, not to look into this, and when you're left on the side of the road having epileptic seizures for over 20 hours, you know, no doctor's ever going to see it, so they're never going to treat you, so you'll just die. And nobody will ever know what we did to you. That's their plan. They double down on fucking that shit, but it's not going to work. There's going to be a dead body, and I'm going to tell everybody what happened to me. And there's records. It's not like it's hard to prove. They trafficked me all over the country, and teachers saw the sudden change. And there was physical therapy and speech therapy right after the overdose, after I went blind. There's so much paperwork, but I have to lead them to it, and that's why I've written down where you can find these papers. Like, for instance, if you want to find the mystery allergy attack, my mother called the overdose where I went blind an allergy attack. You have to go to the doctor I was seeing in Westford. So you look up my name and you figure out who is prescribing drugs at age 7. At age 7, you look at the doctors that were prescribing drugs. Then you find out who my primary care, and that was probably the green guy, the guy who had something green, but he never looked into it either. I had him multiple times, and they don't really, kid primary cares that work with 5-year-olds, usually just listen to the mothers and fathers. So when I said I went blind, my mother just said, it's an allergy attack, nothing to see there. Then they just dropped the subject. And that's how that went. But the teachers were more concerned. And my other primary care, another doctor we saw, I told them what happened to me about going blind, and he was concerned. So my mother said, yes, he was given medication, and yes, I did call, but it was just an allergy attack, nothing to see there. So if you look in my file really far back, about 23, 24, 25 years, 25 mostly, you'll find out that my mother signed off and asked for me to be tripled up on my drugs at the same time as I'm experiencing a sudden change in my nervous system where I suddenly write my name differently, I'm suddenly talking differently, I'm suddenly moving my body differently, and I'm needing speech therapy and physical therapy for this sudden change in my body. But my mother says I was always like this. What's bullshit, because I was coming in first in swim class in the orphanage. They brought us to the YMCA. I was always the best swimmer. I was always the best runner. I was the youngest kid to learn how to ride a bike at St. Anne's. There was an older kid bike, and I was so bored I wanted to ride it. The staff said no every week until they eventually picked me up, put me on the bike, and had me roll around on it. And I really, it was just downhill. It didn't go so well. But that was the first ever time I rode a bike. Then I tried to ride a bike with my adopted parents. And then there was also the time I tried to use stilts in a bike with my foster parents before my adopted parents. There was foster parents that had a lot of kids, and they had stilts and bikes and things like that, and they wanted to teach me how to use stilts and balance. And I was doing pretty well on the stilts. But after I met my adopted mother and she destroyed my nervous system, I couldn't even walk right. Fuck the stilts. See, when before my mother destroyed my nervous system, I could walk with stilts, I could swim in swim class, at least as good as any other kid my age. But by the time my mother fried my nervous system, I couldn't even write my own name right anymore. And the teachers noticed this. I went from being able to use stilts a little bit, learn how to ride a bike, just regular level for a 5-year-old. Nothing super good. It's not like I'm super good at riding a bike or stilts, but I'm able to use my nervous system at the same ability as anybody else my age. But then when my mother destroys my nervous system and I have that overdose and I go blind and my whole nervous system is destroyed and they have me sleep it off and I wake up different, I can't even write my name straight across the page anymore. I can't even form words right, and I can't even move my legs one in front of the other correctly anymore. So by that point, now I'm having to figure out what's going on. So I start sucking on my left arm. But what does my mother do? She calls that self-harming. She says I'm suicidal and depressed and I need more drugs. Then she starts slipping me even more pills during adoptions and Halloween and making me vomit and get sick. Just awful, awful stuff. And what does my father say about all this stuff that he was part of? Was double down on hurting me, was kill me off, was finish me off.
Let's do the deed. Let's try to double down the doctors into killing him.